Hi everyone, long time no see. Sorry about that. My life kind of fell apart again, and I've been busy trying to fix it, so... In my last video, I made much ado about my plans going into 2017, and as is often the case, sadly, whenever I make any plans, those plans went up in smoke within a week of putting that video up because I went back to work after winter vacation and was told that I'd be losing my job and my apartment in 3 months, so... Yeah, cue life crisis, obviously. Since then, I've been working my ass off to try and find a new job, and now that I have finally found one, I figured I'd make a video about my process, how I went about it as a non-binary person, a non-binary gaijin in Japan, because there really is nothing out there about this topic, I think. But before I even get into all that, first I need to throw out a bunch of obligatory disclaimers. This is not going to be a how-to video on how to find a job in Japan, so keep that in mind, please. I am not an expert on finding a job in Japan, not an expert on working in Japan. That said, if you have questions that aren't addressed in this video about working in Japan or finding a job in Japan as a non-binary person, there is such a void of information out there about this topic, so please feel free to ask me questions that you might have in the comment section of this video. But again, I want to stress that I am not an expert on finding work in Japan. If you have more general questions, then Google is your friend because Google has access to a lot more experience and a lot more variety in circumstances and stuff than I can possibly offer you with my limited personal experience. Also, I really cannot stress enough that everything I'm about to say in this video is specific to my personal experience and my personal opinion, so please don't take this video as any more than that. And with that in mind, I guess let's get into it and start off with some background information. So my name is Vesper, if I haven't already said that. I am an American and I've been teaching English in Japan for 6 years now, but having said that, I am only just now starting to try and pursue things about my gender, so everything that I'm navigating now, I'm navigating for the first time. At my current job, I am referred to by my given, my legal name, and I have not disclosed anything regarding my gender. And like I said, I haven't pursued anything yet at all, so hormones, yada yada yada, no. But the name thing specifically is something I was determined to change with my change of jobs, so I'm going to talk about that a lot in this video. Aside from that, coming out or anything else, all of that is completely up in the air still. Also, given that I've been teaching English in Japan for over 6 years now, I was determined to not apply for your average entry-level job because I've already done that, I've been doing that. So that in and of itself severely limited the jobs that I could apply to because the majority of teaching jobs in Japan are entry level, are geared at people who have just got out of college and have a degree. Anyway, obviously the first thing that you do when you are job hunting is make a resume, and obviously a resume has your name on it. So from the start I had to decide how I was going to navigate the name thing. And I also had to do that while keeping in mind the particulars of applying for jobs in Japan because, let's be frank, the same resume that you would submit to, for example, an American employer isn't necessarily going to fly at all or in the same way or as far with a Japanese employer. Even if you are gaijin, even if you are a native English speaker, even if you are afforded a lot more leeway than a Japanese person would be. Anyway, what I ended up doing for my English resumes is I put my legal given first name, and then I put Vesper in parentheses, and then I put my last name. I left out my middle name entirely because that would have just made things hella confusing even for a native speaker. I mirrored that on my Rirek Shisho or my Japanese resume. I made 2 resumes. I put my last name first, and then I put my legal given first name, and then I put Vesper in parentheses last. And I put that in English and in katakana. To further drive home the fact that my name is Vesper, I created a new email address with my last name and Vesper. I use this email address to register for all the job hunting sites. I put this email address on my resumes, of course. I signed all of my cover letters and my email correspondences, etc. with Vesper and my last name. And it worked very well, I think, because while there may have been some initial confusion when potential employers first contacted me, they quickly picked up on the cues that I was dropping, re my name, and they quickly just referred to me as Vesper. I do want to point out and admit, though, that I don't know if this was the best course of action. I will never know how many, potential employers were instantly put off by the naming on my resumes and stuff. I will never know how many just did not contact me at all because of the naming stuff. But also, looking back on it now, I kind of wish that I had put Vesper first and then my legal name in parentheses and then my last name and mirror that in Japanese, because, Vesper is my name. I don't feel like that should be in parentheses. But the only reason why I even put my legal name on everything is because of Japanese bureaucracy. Like, bureaucracy in Japan, really, really strong. And I didn't want potential employers to, be presented with just Vesper in my last name, and then the second I hand them my passport or other documentation, they see that Vesper is my name, and then they feel lied to. I wanted to avoid that, but at the same time, I wanted complete transparency from the start. I wanted to inject Vesper into the conversation from the start and not have to present it later on as, hey, could you call me this instead of my legal name? I wanted it there from the get-go, and they could get used to it. They can know it from the start. And yeah, I think regardless of how I ordered my name or whatever, I accomplished that at least. But also, at the same time, like I said, I don't know at what cost I accomplished that. I don't know how many potential employers saw that naming thing and then just did not contact me at all. So I was taking a risk, and if you do something similar with a resume or whatever, you are taking a risk too, especially in Japan, I feel like. But anywhere, I guess, keep that in mind. Anyway, I very selectively applied for 15 jobs, and like I said, very selectively, I could have easily applied for double that or even triple that, but I was trying to be very selective. I went through Gaijinpod, Daijob.com, Ohio Sensei, and of the 15 jobs that I applied for, I only heard back from and was interviewed by 2. And I also submitted my information to the Hello Work Job Center in Shinjuku for foreigners. It's a government-run job center, but I ended up not actually applying for any job through them, so. One interview, I was flat out asked, so where did you get Vesper from? And of course, I had pre-prepared some responses to questions about my name before the interview because I knew that was gonna be a thing, probably. But, when you're anxious as fuck and you're at the interview, those pre-thought out responses aren't necessarily what comes out of your mouth. And I think what I actually ended up saying was not even anywhere near as good as what I had prepared. It was like, I don't like my name and I prefer Vesper because of the meaning behind it, or something bimyo and vague like that. And yeah, of course, the response to that is, oh, I've never heard of Vesper before, and your name is really, really pretty. And by name, they mean the legal name. But I always get that response, oh, your name is so pretty. Why are you changing it? But anyway, that interview ended up not going anywhere. I didn't get that job, so whatever, I don't fucking care. The other company that I ended up interviewing with and being employed by eventually, I had 3 interviews with. And before you go, whoa, 3 interviews is not the norm. It was kind of a special case, I guess. But yeah, I had 3 interviews, and most of the people that I interviewed with were Japanese. There was an Aussie bloke who's like the head of English education in that region, and some Americans eventually, but yeah, Japanese people. And the bulk of the interviews were conducted in Japanese because that particular position, they were looking for someone who spoke Japanese, so my Japanese skills were being tested. Plus, some of the people interviewing me just didn't speak English, so yeah, Japanese. From the first interview to the last, and to this point, I have never been asked to explain my name, why I go by Vesper, by this particular company. They asked me at the first interview, so which name did I prefer? And I said Vesper, and from that point, it's been smooth sailing. They have never referred to me as anything else. No one in the process has referred to me as anything else. It's always been Vesper. I've been introduced to other people along the way as Vesper, and yeah, it's just gone really, really well. I'm relatively certain, or I would assume, that the people who have seen my legal documents assume maybe that Vesper is a nickname, since, you know, it's not on any of my legal documents. But even so, they are rolling with it and treating it like, you know, any other name, not a nickname, and I really, really appreciate that and can't ask for more, honestly. I'm pretty confident that I will interact with my students using the name Vesper, everyone using the name Vesper. No one will know my legal name except for the people who are privy to my documents, probably. Well, obviously. And I'm confident that when a business card is made for me, because we have business cards there, that Vesper is going to be on there, hopefully. But yeah, it's just been... I couldn't ask for more, honestly. And even if the people who are privy to my documents think that Vesper is a nickname, I'm not going to push that matter because they're treating it like it's not just a nickname, and that's just awesome. That's as good as it's going to get until I legally change my name, which living in Japan is getting in the way of me doing because I have to go back to America for that. The next thing I want to talk about is attire or presentation, because in Japan, the customs for job hunting or shu shokukatsudo or ten shokukatsudo are very, very strict, especially compared to America. It doesn't matter what job you're applying for or what your gender is, you will be expected to wear a black business suit, white collar dress shirt, the works. Even your shoes, even your hair. If you're applying for a teaching job, think about even your socks, because you're gonna have to take off your shoes and put on slippers when you get to the school. Everything, there are expectations that you are expected to meet. Even a navy blue suit would be no good. And yes, if you're watching this, you're probably a gaijin like me, and gaijin are afforded leeway that Japanese natives are not allowed at all. But even so, don't push things. Research it, look into Google. And yeah, do your fucking homework, especially if you want to work in a Japanese company. Having said that, even though everyone is expected to wear a black business suit, that doesn't mean that everyone is held to the same expectations. And obviously there are gender differences between suits, and you will be expected to wear the suit that corresponds to the gender marker that's on your legal documents. So yeah. My documents have an F on them, and I am assumed to be a cis woman, so obviously I'm expected to wear a women's suit. But I'll be damned if I ever wear a women's suit, which isn't to say I want to wear a men's suit. But those are the two options that I have, and I am, aesthetically speaking, whatever, more comfortable wearing men's suits, so yeah. And I will admit that as someone who is assumed to be a cis woman, I am afforded a certain level of leeway within society at large when it comes to wearing men's clothing, and I take advantage of this leeway. That said, there are certainly places where wearing a men's suit could cost me an interview, could cost me a job, but generally speaking, I am afforded a certain level of leeway that, say, someone who is assumed to be a man who is gender non-conforming may not actually have. And yeah, I acknowledge that. I have leeway and I push it. I was determined to wear what was comfortable for me, because if an employer wouldn't employ me based on, what I was wearing to the interview, I probably would not be comfortable working there anyways. So that is the mindset that I took when I chose what to wear. Obviously, I also have researched, the companies that I was specifically applying to too. And I tried to conform to those things in my own way as best as I could. As someone who is gender non-conforming, I always have to decide how far I am willing to compromise myself, how far I am willing to conform to social norms in order to get a job, maintain a job, whatever. And it's rough, but I'm doing what I can, and I'm trying to push the envelope more with this new job than I have with past jobs. Having said that, I went shopping for clothes because I didn't have any clothes that were particularly appropriate for job hunting, especially in Japan with Japan standards. So I went shopping. I went to my favorite brand, Uniqlo. If you don't know, Uniqlo is a Japanese brand. And they carry extra small, size extra small, in selective men's clothing. So I went there, I bought stuff, and this is what I bought. I already had the tie, I already had vest, but I didn't have this vest because I wear ties and vests on the regular already at my current job, casual, business attire, whatever. But I didn't have a vest that was, you know, more appropriate to this kind of suit thing. So I bought a new vest, I bought the jacket, I bought the white collared shirt. And yeah, Uniqlo, you are awesome, forever loyal customer. One social norm or expectation that I absolutely could not conform to in terms of professionalism and job hunting in Japan was my hair, obviously, because I have waist length locks. And yeah, in Japan, social protocol for job hunting calls for you to wear long hair up. You are not ever supposed to wear long hair down unless you know, your employer says that it's okay, or you don't work for a Japanese employer and they don't care anyway. So yeah, I have fucking long ass locks, and I also have unconventional ear piercings that I must conceal to work in Japan, and putting my hair up entirely would obviously expose my ears, and I refuse, absolutely refuse to compromise when it comes to my ear piercings. I will not retire any of them. So that only leaves me with the option of wearing part of my hair down to cover my ears, because yeah, that's literally all I can do. But at the same time, I have to try and conform as best as I can and meet Japan, you know, halfway. So the back half of my hair, I put up into a bun kind of thing to demonstrate that I can do the whole up hair game thing. Because when you have hair like me, you actually have to fucking demonstrate to employers that you can in fact do that with your hair. So yeah, I have this really kind of shitty, I don't even like this hairdo, but it's what I manage with because it conceals my ears and yet, you know, conforms to the Japanese shit in at least half of a sense. In terms of presentation and attire for job hunting or working in Japan, that's all I'm going to talk about in this video. What I'm wearing now, what I wore to my interview, is pretty much what I'm going to wear on a daily basis to work now, because the school that I'm working at has a business dress code and teachers are expected to wear jackets, suits all the time, except for, you know, when you're doing sports events, and then there's a separate uniform that you are supposed to wear. But yeah, this will be my everyday work attire now. Name and presentation aside, there are a lot of things that are related to gender that are now up in the air and will continue to be completely up in the air for a long time now, I feel like. Before getting notice that I was going to lose my job, I had intended to start low-dose HRT really soon. But that was in the context of working at a place that I had been in for years, and I was familiar with what the possible consequences would be, and my contract was going to be up in several months anyways, so I had planned to time my start of HRT with, you know, my contract ending, so that by the time changes started happening, it wouldn't matter because my job would be over and I wouldn't actually be risking much at all. But now that I have a new job, and this is a job that I am completely, you know, I'm unfamiliar of what the circumstances would be if I went on HRT, aside from, you know, probably just losing my job. I do not know what my employer's stance is on this kind of thing, and it's a job that I actually don't want to lose, so I would be risking a lot more now by starting HRT, and yeah, I just don't know. For the next year at least, I'm going to be playing it by ear and, you know, feeling out the situation. So HRT is not really an option anymore, sadly. Which in and of itself, I'm really kind of fucking pissed off and torn, and it's because it's so ironic that now with my new job, I will be physically close to lots of clinics where I could get HRT, Whereas at my current job, distance from any clinic was a big problem. But now that problem is gone and I still can't start HRT. Oh my god. But also, not just in terms of HRT or anything medical, my working situation is changing drastically in other regards too, and that affects, you know, coming out or anything like that, because at my current job, I was working for a very small family-owned company, but my new job is a very big company, and this new job probably has, you know, policies, a lot more red tape to get through versus my current job, which had like no red tape. It was just, you know, if my boss was okay with it, then okay. But yeah, I'm having to navigate working for a big company now, and you know, obviously they probably don't have a policy in place for trans people or non-binary people or gender non-conforming at all, but like I said, I'm gonna have to play it by ear and see if, you know, maybe there is stuff like that or whatever. But you know, not just HRT, coming out, anything, talking to anyone about anything. And even not just that, but like going to Tokyo Pride like I've done every year for the past 3 years now. God, sorry for the noisy traffic. But going to like Tokyo Pride and walking in the parade and my face possibly being on TV now or in the newspaper, that has happened in the past. I have been in the media. But that happening now when I'm going to be living much closer to Tokyo, and, you know, people in the company possibly, you know, seeing that, versus when I lived in the countryside, I was very distant from any of the media that happened in Tokyo. People at my company here, probably, there was a very small chance of them actually seeing anything that came out of Tokyo regarding Pride, but now I'm going to be living closer to Tokyo in a bigger company, more eyes to see the media and possibly recognize my face, and students too. And it's just like, I have to reevaluate not just stuff that happens in a workplace. I have to also think about, you know, stuff outside of the workplace and possibly being recognized places and stuff. And things have gotten complicated. And like Tokyo Pride is in like 2 months, so I have to figure shit out. How much, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but anyways, that's all for this video, because I'm just rambling now, and this video is ridiculously long. Again, if you have any questions regarding working or job hunting in Japan as a non-binary person, feel free to hit me up in the comments or outside of YouTube, whatever. I'll do my best to help if I can. And yeah, I'm hella busy right now because I'm still in the middle of the whole moving thing and then starting a new job thing, so I am going to disappear from YouTube for a little while soon. But before that, I hope to get another video up before I actually move, so look forward to that, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.